the painting part, first we want to make sure the sketch is very light. So take a kneading eraser and roll it on top of your sketch and make sure you make the sketch extremely light, the way I'm doing right now. And the reason we want to do this is we don't want to show pencil lines once we are done with the whole painting. Now to start off, we are using a basic watercolor palette and a round watercolor brush. So take some water, just water, plain water, and start making the paper wet. And when you are making the paper wet, avoid the lantern, and then you can make the rest of the paper wet. And if you want, you can try to avoid the lantern handle, but that's okay if you can't. The key thing is we just want to avoid the lantern as much as possible. And then just plain water, and we're going to use the plain water to make the paper fully wet. And make sure it's not dripping wet. We just want it to be a bit shiny. And you can see now on the bottom left side of the paper how shiny it is with the water. And now for the painting part, I'm going to use purple. Take a little bit of purple and just start putting the paint down on the bottom of the fixture right there. And then just add the purple a little bit elsewhere. And if you forgot to add water in any part of the painting, just you can add water as you keep going too. And I'm trying to do a little bit of shading in between that lantern where you don't have a sketch, and on the top left as well. Yeah, you can't see this part, it got trimmed out in the video, but I'm pretty much doing what I did on the bottom right part with respect to the purple color. So it's just put the purple color on the paper just the way you did on the bottom right. And then as you come down as well. And then I'm going to take a little bit of green and add that green in the bottom part of the lantern and also on the sides a little bit. Now you have lots of greens on your palette and you're probably wondering which green shall I use. So I would say just be creative and have fun with it. Like, you don't have to stick to a particular one. So if you feel like you want to use a particular color, then go for it. This is a bit of a bluish green or so, I would say, more blue. So I just use that blue for that part of the wash. So you can use the blue over there as well. And blend the color out as you go to the corners. Like, just take more water in your brush and then just blend the color out. And this is going to be a bit abstract. It's not going to, I mean, if you're wondering where do I put the purple and where do I put the blue or where do I put the green, just use your imagination and go with it. It doesn't have to be a certain way. The idea is to have some leaves and some flowers in the background. So in order to build that interesting background, we want to first do a basic color. And now for the fixture itself, I'm going to do it in yellows. First, I'm going to start off with the yellow. As you can see, I popped some yellow on the lantern as well. And now I'm going to come and do the body of the lantern with the yellow. So the reason we want to do that yellow is the lantern is lit up and there's a little bit of, bright yellow coming from the center of the lantern. So we just want to capture that. And now I'm going to add a little bit of orange. And the orange goes on the top part of the lantern, right there, as you can see. And maybe a little bit on the circular part of the lantern as well, on the side. And you can use the orange in the bottom center part of that lantern as well, because there's the light coming through that center part of the lantern in the bottom, so we want to use that color. And now that we did the first base wash, we need to dry it up. So I used a hair dryer to dry out the painting. Now that it's all dry, I'm going to start doing the layers on top of this lantern. So I'm using brown to do the details on the lantern. So the top part of that lantern design that I have, I'm going to use a little bit of brown right there, as you can see. And for this exercise, you want to keep two brushes in your hand, one with the color like so, and one without color, but it's a little bit damp. And we're going to use that brush to blend the colors in that surface right there. So we always want to keep one brush with the color and one which is a damp brush. It shouldn't be dripping with water. It should just be a little bit damp. And for the bottom part of the fixture, I'm using that bluish green again, and I mixed it with a little bit of black in order to get a darker shade. So I paint on the top part of it, and then I'm using the other brush to blend the rest of the paint on that area right there. So it goes from dark to light. It's a little bit dark on the top and lighter in the bottom. And then to change this a little bit, I'm using the dark purple underneath for the inside of that same bottom structure of the lantern. And then I'm using again my damp brush to blend the color. And you want to do this blending fast. As soon as you put the other color you should be ready with the other brush to go and blend. You don't want to wait for that paint to dry, then it's hard to blend it nicely. And I'm gonna use more details. I'm gonna do more details on the top of the lantern, and I'm using the same color as I used before. It's kind of like a dark brown. And then blend it on the top a little bit so it doesn't look pretty flat. You want to make sure you have a brush with a nice tip. This is going to help you get those details very well. And then I'm using purple to do the top part of that lantern. So first, take the purple paint and do the purple paint first, and then again use your second brush to blend the shadow, blend that into the rest of the structure. So again, when you're blending, you want to go from outside into the color. So you first paint the color like that. And then when you're using the brush, you want to only go from the part where it's blending the color. You want to only start blending in the corners and then slowly spread to the rest of the area. So now I'm taking a little bit of the dark green and I'm adding that shading in the bottom left part of my lantern. So I'm going to make this lantern nice and colorful. And this is where we use our artist imagination to add some colors and make it more interesting rather than making it very realistic. So this is more of an abstract painting with a lot of color, and it's really up to you guys what colors you want to add there. But whatever colors you add, you have to make sure you balance it out in the entire painting, or else it will look too odd if you just suddenly have red in the center and nowhere else. So mostly the colors I'm using here are yellows, reds, purple, green, and I'm just trying to stick to that. So this is another greenish, bluish green that I'm using to blend on the top right side of that lantern. With watercolors, we want to make sure we don't blend the paint too much on the paper, because when you keep going back and forth too many times on the paper, it'll start to lose the crispiness of the paper, and the paper will look damaged. So make sure you don't do that. Now I take a little bit of orange and I added a tinge of brown into the orange to make it a little bit darker orange. Either you can do that or you can come up with bright orange as well. But having a little bit of brown in there just tones it down a little bit and it's not too bright. And then once I paint that, I'm going to come there. You can see clearly how I come to that corner where it's blending into the yellow. And first I work on that and then I touch the rest of the area if needed. And then I'm going to do the same in that. So paint the top part and blend to the bottom. And then I'm going to use the same orange on the top left. So this is how we balance the colors. So this is what I was talking about earlier. When you pick a color, you want to make sure you're balancing it evenly in the painting so it doesn't look odd. And then I'm adding a little bit of darker green right there to the right side of that lantern in order to catch some shadows and it'll start looking more rounded if you shade the shadows, and if you paint the shadows, and it'll start popping out of the paper. Now I'm gonna do the handle. I'm planning to do that in green and orange. So first, to match with the bulb with the lantern, right? So I'm doing the green first, and it's on the bottom side of that handle. And then again, I'm using my blending brush to come and blend the rest of it. Just make it a little bit more darker than it is. So you can do a second layer if you want. Now I'm gonna use the orange, the same orange we used for the bulb, for the body of the lantern. So we're gonna use the same orange and the same green. So that brings a little bit of balance of color in the rest of the painting. And then blend that color into the green. And then I'm gonna take the lighter green to do this second part of the fixture and also add a tinge of purple to it to give it an interesting texture. And I used purple in the body of the lantern as well. So again, I'm sticking to the colors which I've already used, which is the purples, greens, yellows, and oranges. So for this one, I'm using the purple and the green. So I'm using the greens as I did for the first part of the handle. I'm using the green for the bottom part of the handle, and then I'm gonna use a lighter shade on the top. So it's the same technique I'm using now. And then I'm using purple to do the top part of it. And I'm doing the same for the topmost curve of the lighting fixture. And then yellow for more details. So yellow again coming down on that fixture. And now I'm taking the darker purple and I want to do the final details on the lantern, which is that little metal structure going across the bulb area. So we want to make sure we get at least 2 shades of color in this, and also in this case I painted on from left to right on the top, and I'm using my blender brush to blend the color down. So it looks like there are 2 shades of color in this particular band, and that actually is what gives a very interesting look to the painting. And then I'm using a darker green to do the sides. And a little bit of darker green on this side as well. And then I'm taking another darker color, the darker purple, and do the other 2 details on the lamp body. I did more darker paint on the top and then blended the color as we were coming down. And that's the reason is because you have the bulb in the bottom part of the lantern, and it's gonna make that part of the lantern, the bottom part, very bright, and as it goes up it's so that's why the metal details that we are doing, they go light where the bulb is, and then as you go up you make it a little bit darker. And then make sure you get this as symmetrical as possible. Like from our sketching video, you can see by drawing that line in the center, you can actually mirror the shape on either side, and that's ensuring that you have a nice shaped lantern. Now I'm taking like a darker blue, and you can also mix a little bit of black in it and do a little bit more detail on that bottom part to show that the rim, which is on the top, is in front of you, and the rim in the bottom is behind you, in the back. And then also doing a little bit more shading with that dark shade across the top part. These shades, this type of shading actually makes that, really pops that lantern and will start making it look more 3-dimensional. Now let's do a little bit more detail on that lantern handle, and as you can see, these are shadows that I'm adding on the handle, and these shadows will really make it look more 3-dimensional. So this is basically where it's the difference of drawing a square versus a cube. This is kind of how you capture to show the different sides of that handle, and in this you can see, I'm sure that the purple shade that I just drew shows the inside angle of that particular handle. So you can do this detail if you wish, or if you think it's too complicated, you can skip it, and that's totally fine. And I would challenge the more advanced students to try this out, because this is how you make your drawing a little bit, take it to the next level, basically, where you're trying to capture that three-dimensional details in your sketch. So just adding those dark shadows on the inside, on the top, and then the bottom, suddenly that looks more of a three-dimensional. And then this hinge that you have, it's sitting on top of that bigger orange and green frame, so you want to add a little bit of shadow, so that's why I'm adding the darks on either side of it. And I'm gonna do the same level of details in the bottom as well, where I add a few dark shadows. And then you want to blend, when you're adding the shadows into a bigger area, you want to make sure that you're blending those colors down, so it doesn't look, again, flat, but it looks more natural. And I could do a lot more details on this handle if I wanted, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit simple and not too complicated. And now to make that bottom part of it dark, I'm going to use a darker green than purple, because I already have green there, and I'm going to use that darker green to show the shadows. And then blend that as you go to the left. So there you go. Just few details, and then all of a sudden your painting looks a little bit more three-dimensional. We're going to do the same type of shading by giving shadows on this one as well, just the way I did the other one on the top. And then I'm just adding more shadows, more details on top of that. Now I'm gonna add a few details of leaves in the background, and this is gonna be very loose, very abstract. So just have fun with it. Don't worry about having a clean structure, and don't worry about having a drawing. Just do free-form leaves, and they don't have to be perfect. And this is just to give a little bit of interesting background to your painting. And remember, your leaves in the background are not the highlight of the painting. The highlight of the painting is your lantern, and the bright, colorful lantern. So all the other details you're adding in the background are just just for fun, and it's just to give a little bit more interesting look to the painting. So don't worry about the details. Like, as you can see, I'm keeping it very abstract. If you're doing one shape of the leaves, just stick to that one shape, but do different sizes of that leaf to make it a little bit more realistic. I'm adding a few more leaves over there and on the top as well. Coming down on the side. And I always like to add two different shades of green, so I'm going to use that light green as well and add a few more details of leaves. And it's always good to add 2 or 3 different shades in your background for the leaves, just to give it a little bit more interesting look, rather than having just one shade, which would make it look pretty flat, right? So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding another shade of green as well. And then once you are done with all of the green and you think you've got a good interesting greens going on, then you can add other colors. Now I'm adding a little bit of purple, and I'm just gonna do like dots like that, but very loose, just to show some flowers. But these are all like flowers which are out of focus and in the background, right? We don't want to put too much focus on that. So very abstract. But that pop of purple here and there looks amazing along with the lantern. And make sure you have enough water in your brush when you're doing these details of the purple. You don't want the shapes to be too defined. Like, just if you think you are getting too much of a shape there, see, you can just blend it into the background, just the way I'm doing right now. So there you go. Voila, we have a beautiful, colorful lantern. Hope you had fun doing this.